Hey, e-commerce marketing podcast listener. I wanted to let you know that we have created a 6-month guide to marketing your e-commerce store. You can download this guide by visiting getosi.com/guide or by texting GetOSI to 33444. This guide will show you how to get more traffic, sales, and conversions for your online store. Get the guide right now by visiting getosi.com/guide or by texting GetOSI to 33444. Welcome back, everyone, to the e-commerce marketing podcast. I am your host, Arlen Robinson, and today we have a very special guest, Dr. Dave Chaffee. Dave Chaffee is co-founder and content director of Smart Insights, an online publisher and consultancy who provides an educational platform with templates and guides to help individuals improve their digital skills and improve businesses ROI. He is author of 5 best-selling books on digital marketing, including e-commerce and digital business management. Welcome to the podcast, Dave.
Thank you, Arlen. Great to be here. Looking forward to going through the trends.
Yeah, that sounds great. We appreciate it. Yeah, before we get started and get into it, why don't you tell me a little bit about your background? Sounds like you got a pretty diverse background as far as your authorships with 5 best-selling books. But yeah, why don't you tell us about, kind of a little bit about your history, how you get started, how you got into this industry?
For sure. Yes, I'm lucky to have been involved in digital marketing and e-commerce from way back. So at the mid-90s, actually. Okay. I was originally an IT person, and when the internet and email and e-commerce first came along, there just wasn't anyone with the expertise to help businesses take advantage of these new tools. So back in 98, I was doing some of the first courses in email marketing and SEO, and really I got to love explaining what the best options were and trying to puzzle it through, because it's still like a maze, isn't it? There's so many options, and which are the best options for retailers. So I've always enjoyed just trying to work out what's hot and what's not, and helping people focus and prioritize. Where we help is through planning. So we find many businesses don't have time to plan, right, but we have templates that help put a bit of structure on the marketing activities and help get that ROI, as you said.
Mm-hmm, definitely. Yeah, and as you said, the landscape, e-commerce landscape has changed quite a bit, especially since the mid-90s. And as you mentioned, there is so much out there. Most businesses these days really, they don't have an idea of kind of where to start or where to go. They don't have a lot of time to do planning. So yeah, businesses like yours are definitely, great for providing that opportunity and resources to help them out. But, today we have you on here, we have a very timely topic here. We're going to be talking about the e-commerce trends for 2018. At the end of the year here, we're almost at the end of 2017. And so what I want to kind of find out was, looking back at this past year, or this current year that we're in that's about to wrap up, what do you think were some of the biggest e-commerce trends in 2017?
It's something that always is on my mind at this time of year, because we find there are so many people searching online to find out how they can get an edge. So we actually ask our audience. We have 150,000 subscribers on Smart Insights. So rather than just saying, what are your top trends, we just ask them for a single marketing activity that they think in the year ahead is going to drive them the most upgrowth, the uptick in terms of sales. So what we've seen this year, the top 3 are actually content marketing, leveraging big data and data of all sorts. So using analytics and testing to make improvements. And then the third one, which we've actually only added onto our list for the first time, is machine learning and artificial intelligence. So those are the top 3. There's a long list, of course. You can imagine social medias in 4th, mobiles in 5th, right, CRO in 6th, and so on. But it's those those top three I think are interesting from a retail point of view. I think it's going to vary case to case, but I think that there is a lot of interest in personalization, and that's now open to smaller businesses. They're maybe not ready yet for machine learning and artificial intelligence. That will maybe a couple of years down the line, but they're great low cost ways of personalizing in the journey through the sales funnel on your site, which are much more cost effective now.
Right, definitely. Your personalization these days is huge, and I think all of this has been spawned by the amount of data on individuals that's out there, and this has really all been kind of thrust upon the marketplace from the social networks, the Facebook, which has a tremendous amount of demographic information on literally probably I would say 80 to 90% of the world, which is incredible. Yeah. And so being able to have all of that information as far as people's wants, needs, and likes on various subjects is huge. Where kind of back in the day, like you said, when you started in the mid 90s, when social media really either didn't exist or was kind of at its infancy, there really wasn't anything like this. I think businesses really just had to depend on, in order to personalize different campaigns, they kind of had to go the old school route to doing surveys. Focus groups, I think, were big. I think, focus groups these days are still used in a way, but more online purposes, more of doing types of surveys. I mean, what's your opinion about that? Do you see focus groups at all being something businesses use these days?
Yeah, I think in larger businesses for sure, but in small and mid-sized businesses, there's now much more granular ways you can ask the question in the customer journey, where you get specific feedback on specific pages. So we're big fans of these sort of tools. Like we use a tool called Hotjar, where we can say, is this page clear if we've just launched, say new pricing or a new way of explaining our proposition, and we'll get that immediate feedback. We'll also use tools to get the key. Would you recommend us to other companies? So that net promoter score, we'll ask those questions, and from that feedback, we do actually do like an annual customer survey, like a lot of businesses. I'm sure a lot of the people listening in do, but you can do that on individual category or product pages. It gives you much more actionable data. So yeah, I think research is certainly to the fore. But going back to personalization, although you could say, when we got started with, Amazon launched in the mid 90s, and they had email and web personalization soon after. But what's really shocked me is that more businesses haven't taken advantage of it. And I think it's this sort of lack of planning and maybe reviewing your capabilities. And I saw a great we like these sort of minds tools to help people think, well, where are we now in terms of our marketing? Where should we be? It's from a vendor called Monetate, and they call it the personalization pyramid. And they're saying at the bottom of the pyramid, you should really be starting to have rule-based tests. And if you're not doing personalization now, you should start by looking at, say, returning visitors against new visitors. So new visitors get the message 15% off the first purchase that you see quite often through a pop-up. And then taking it from there, you mentioned demographics. As you've got returning visitors and customers who bought more than once, you might want to do that form of personalization. But that's all rules-based. Then at the next level, you might want to set up tests for those rules-based messages, if you like, to see which are most effective. So I think another trend that goes alongside personalization is using A/B testing and doing conversion rate optimization, because you may be popping up some merchandising or offer messages, but it's just like Google AdWords. If you don't test the copy or the product side by side or the visuals, you don't know what works. So I think again, A/B testing, CRO, that's going to be a trend. And one of the interesting things this year you're asking about is that Google, they've updated their A/B testing tool now to Google Optimize, and that actually builds in some personalization. Of course, that's a free tool. It was previously it was available in Google Analytics 360. So I think businesses had to pay millions and upwards to Google to get the support, but that's open for everyone. So whether it's personalizing and A/B testing on your own platform, or whether you could hook into Google, I think that's an essential area to plan in the year ahead.
Yeah, definitely. And that kind of brings me to my next kind of question is, there's so much out here. You mentioned this Google 360 component where they now have the optimizing tool that they make available for businesses, for anyone, for free, yes, which is incredible. And so I do always wonder because, with small businesses, online businesses, because we deal with a lot of small businesses here at OmniStar with our affiliate referral software. And, I talk to a lot of business owners, a lot of startup companies that, are hit the ground running, kind of doing, of course, a million things all at once.
Yes.
And so what I always wonder is it important for small businesses to stay on top of these e-commerce trends? And if so, I guess why and how? What are some suggestions you would have for, a business owner that, wants to stay up to date, but, he may not subscribe to blogs, doesn't have a time to read that. Is there any suggestions, tips that you can offer?
Sure. Yeah, I think a lot of the trends may not be relevant straight away to the small business owner. It's a bit like I said, machine learning and AI. Right. That's what a lot of the big e-commerce platforms are looking at. So over in the UK and Europe, we've got Zalando, who are they're across 20 countries now, and they're applying machine learning at quite a detailed level across very, very specific issues. Like, we know that apparel is one of the big purchase areas, and they're looking at sizing. So through them doing tests on sizing, even though, say, a smaller business may not have machine learning perhaps for several years until it becomes more affordable, that doesn't stop them doing tests on their pages in terms of affordability. Right. We've actually got a guy, Mark Hall, who writes in for some of our member content, and he was looking at what Nordstrom in the US are doing because, of course, with the shift to mobile, I think a big question for a smaller business is, how are our mobile visitors? How good are we at converting them? Mm-hmm. Because what you tend to find across the board is that although mobile smartphone is so popular, the conversion rates are actually about half the level of desktop, because people are browsing and it's more difficult to buy. Yeah. So, that's a trend that Zalando and Nordstrom, they're looking at their product selection and filtering on smartphone. Okay. But smaller businesses can do that as well. Right. I mean, it was interesting I was looking at, I think you link to Shopify, don't you? As they're one of the big platforms. That is correct. Yeah, we are partners with them and have been for quite a while now. Yeah, so they're always great because they're one of the larger platforms. There's many others, I know, but they've done some interesting research recently on the Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and they were looking at which channels are driving sales and conversion rates. So they found, for example, it's much easier to get high conversion rates on email and direct visits than it is in social media. So, looking at how your social media visits are converting is one thing. They actually found it's now 64% of sales were on smartphone. I think you tend to get more people converting on smartphone through these sales periods, but it really shows if you're not segmenting your audience in analytics and saying how are we catering for these smartphone visitors, you're really it's likely you're going to be missing out. So I think that's how smaller businesses, if you like, can learn from larger businesses. Take a look at what they're investing a lot in to improve, and think, well, how can we improve our journey? Mm-hmm. Right, definitely. That makes sense. That's one of the things that I always, other businesses that I'm talking to, as far as, what direction to go. You can really learn a lot from looking at, the big guys. Of course, a small business is not on a level as what they are doing, but you can definitely glean some
some key things as far as the strategies that they're doing with regards to email marketing, with regards to their ad placement, ad copy. I mean, the whole nine. Because the thing that most people, don't really realize, or they just kind of forget, is that these large companies, they are spending millions and millions of dollars to marketing companies that, are doing a ton of research. And so if of course you can't copy what they do to, at all, of course, you won't be able to mimic what they're doing, but you can definitely learn a lot and kind of base some of your strategies on what they've done, because it's really based on solid research and a huge amount of funding.
Yeah, and whether it's a large e-com business or a small e-com business, the levers you pull to get better results, they're actually quite similar. Everyone's got a sales funnel. So you mentioned email marketing there, and when we research this and marketing automation, we find that many businesses, everyone's got an email platform, and email works well for them, as we saw in that research there. It's the highest converting.
Right.
But many businesses, they might capture email address early on when someone hits the website, but they'll have quite a basic welcome email. They won't actually optimize that. They'll maybe just send one welcome email, whereas some of the big brands like Clinique in the makeup, I know they send 3 welcome emails. I think there's Zulily, they send 5. So extending your email program is something that any business can do. Another example is just looking at your homepage, whether you're a large business or a small business. It's very likely, if you've got a brand and people are searching for you, that's your number one page, particularly for returning visitors. And you can test your value proposition. So do I trust you? What's the offer compared to your competitors? By A/B testing the homepage, you can have some big wins. We've actually tested that ourselves this year, where we've just looked at the visual form of identity. We created a new mobile optimized page, and we've actually used cartoon characters and videos rather than some of the flatter imagery and stock photos we've used in the past, and that's made a big difference. And I've seen that with big companies as well. They're testing this as well, the way they get across the discounts and the delivery and the refunds. Those are all important.
Sure.
Another thing we've done, just as a practical tip for the guys listening, we've implemented across all of our table pages one of the stripes you see across every page of the site, just below the navigation bar. And that's made a huge difference, because it's not, we're getting that message across not just on the home page,
right,
on the checkout page, but it's on every page. So that's a great example, I think, of what a small business can change quite quickly. We say do 90-day planning as part of that. That's what we advise, is you just break it out and say, okay, we've got so much to do, which is just business as usual, but let's take one thing that we test each 90-day period, or if you're a bit larger, 2 or 3 things. So this 90 days, we're going to optimize our homepage. The next 90 days, we're going to look across these run of site messages. That's what I recommend. Yeah,
that's a great feedback, because, there's so much you can focus on. A lot of times, I know, being a part of our business, we're trying to do a lot with regards to marketing, but if you're strategic about it, and like you said, focus on one thing in that 90-day period, it can really help you really determine, is this going to be worth doing in the long run, and you won't be distracted where you're kind of juggling, you're doing a site-wide message, you're working to optimize your Google AdWords campaign, stuff like that, but you're focusing on one thing, and that makes sense. And so, now, of course, the topic of this webinar is the e-commerce trends for 2018. I know we touched on a few of them, but what do you think are going to be some of the big trends coming up for this for the new year coming up?
Yeah, I think we've talked about some of the bigger trends. I think there's also the trends that are perhaps a bit less well known. And for me, and this is where with the smaller businesses, it's really looking at, you're mentioning AdWords there, but what can you do within your organic search marketing is, that's huge potential if you can get it right. It's often a challenge to work against the big guys, but one of the the trends which I think is a bit below the radar is something called AMP, which is accelerated mobile pages.
Okay.
And I find publishers tend to have heard of this because it was introduced a couple of years ago now by Google in Google News. It's now available across all types of pages, and Smart Insights are a publisher, so we've had this around a year now. And what this does, Google is like obsessed on download speed, and Google is favoring these AMP pages that rather than being served by, your website or your host, they're actually served by Google, and they appear more or less instantly. So we found through creating these AMP pages, you see these if you're on a smartphone, by the way, you get these little lightning symbols to show that those are AMP. But what I'm hearing from, and I'm hearing this from Google actually, their head of search marketing, he's actually the product lead on AMP. It goes across Bing as well. I think Bing are buying into this and Yahoo. So if you're able to set these up, retailers are finding both more visits but also higher levels of conversion as well. So I think if your listeners haven't heard of AMP, it's definitely worth checking out. It's actually a Google neutral project. So they're pushing it, but it's available from other platforms as well.
Yeah, that's definitely a great tip, and I know a lot of people haven't heard of that. So it's definitely worth looking into, and I know for the upcoming trends, we touched on the machine learning. I know that's going to be a big area where there's going to be some advancements with marketing and kind of anticipating what customers are doing and then providing them with specific ads based on, their activities. So that's just always going to just continue to advance. I know I was on a previous podcast where we talked a lot about the social media trends, and we discussed marketing and advertising, influencer marketing and advertising through the Instagrams and the Snapchats. And so I guess the $1 million question I propose to our guest then is, what's going to be the future of those platforms, or are those just going to be a kind of fly-by-night platform? Because there's a lot of hype for Instagram now. Snapchat there is, but I think maybe it could be starting to fade. And so I just wonder, does it make sense to even for a small business to even go that route with those types of new social platforms that's trending? I mean, what's your opinion about that?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, because there is a huge opportunity if you've got the right type of product where your audience is active on Instagram. So fashion in a youth market is a clear example. If you're not engaging your audience on Instagram, and because of the visual nature of fashion and fashion trends, that's a huge missed opportunity. But maybe if you're not in clothing and you're more traditional, perhaps electronics retail, then actually it may not do anything for you at all.
Right.
I think the best way to make a call is if you look what the big guys are doing on, say, Instagram or Snapchat.
Right.
And if they're getting good traction, then maybe, or some of the bigger startups as well, how are they doing? But
Right.
I think you can't have a one-size-fits-all rule. And particularly for e-com, I think marketers love organic social because it's free. But when you look at actually what drives sales, like I've seen some data from Costora across US retail businesses, the larger ones, it is actually pretty small. The top three are always organic, paid search, affiliate marketing, and email is up there. That's four,
Right.
top four. But when you look at social, so direct social leading to sales, it's actually 2% on the last click, 2 to 3% of all sales. So from that sense, I can't get that excited about social unless it's a sector where it's really a sweet spot and it does work well.
Right. It depends. Like you said, there's no one size fits all. For some businesses, it can work well. And it does make sense to look at what the big guys are doing. But what I always recommend is just don't put all of your eggs in one basket. Don't put a huge amount of marketing dollars in and, those things that, they could be fly by night deals, the Snapchats or the Instagram. And so,
I think it's probably stabilized now, though, hasn't it? So
it has a bit. Yeah,
we have got that top 5 and they're here to stay. And for most consumer audiences, Facebook and Instagram are a gimme, maybe Snapchat. That's the jury's still out on that one.
Right.
But I think paid social is worth a mention as well, because I know smaller businesses don't like to pay for media, but if it's effective media, like AdWords can be, then paid social is worth looking at. And I think that's a trend as well.
Sure.
As the likes of Facebook and obviously their own Instagram, they're reducing your opportunity for organic reach.
Right.
So if you're not doing retargeting using Facebook, where people have already visited your site or their existing customers, if you're not using techniques like customer match in Google or similar audiences in Facebook to remind people, that's a trend to doing that even amongst smaller businesses. I mean, we at Smart Insights, we get like 500,000 visits a month, mostly through organic search, but we still pay for those social and Google AdWords reminders, this retargeting.
Right.
I think that's a trend as well that everyone can take advantage of.
Yeah, definitely. I'm seeing a lot more of that, the retargeting and then the social retargeting as well. And so one of the things that we always like to do at the end of the podcast here is if you can provide us with one thing that an e-commerce business can do right now to help them increase their traffic, sales, and help them business grow, if it's something that you're familiar with, or what would you recommend?
I think I've probably mentioned 5 on the call, so I won't go through them again. I think if I had to choose one, I would say it's A/B testing and run a test on your homepage or your run of site messages of why people should buy from you. That can have a great uplift.
Okay, great. Yeah, that definitely makes sense because homepage is very important. The only thing I always wonder, though, about A/B testing, and I've heard from other marketers, and you can maybe chime in, is that what I heard sometimes is that unless you're getting a large enough amount of traffic, A/B testing is really not even worth doing. Is that true, or what's your take on that?
Yeah, that's an interesting, it's quite a big question, but for smaller and medium business, it is a challenge because if you're doing a test on an individual page and it's got, let's say, a few hundred visits,
and that can be a lot of,
you get that statistical significance.
Exactly.
You really should be looking at 10,000 visits and up, and that's partly why I mentioned the homepage, but also why I mentioned those run of site tests where you've got the messaging across every page. I mean, I'll give you an example of what we ran on Smart Insights. Like a lot of retailers, we've got, as a publisher, we want to capture people's emails of address on the first visit. So we already had this actually. And we were talking to a conversion rate agency, and they were saying, okay, you've got this nice pop-up, it's well branded, but it doesn't have any customer testimonials on it.
Right.
So, and this was accounting for like 30% of our email subscribers. So what we did was across the bottom, they said you need some social proof. So we'd done some customer research, and we just put in 3 customer testimonials, just the names of 3 people from 3 different businesses saying why they worked with us. And that actually increased our conversion to subscription for that pop-up by 10%.
Wow.
And that test actually completed in a week because it was across every page of the site. So you're completely right. I think A/B testing is sometimes shown as a silver bullet, but if you make big changes and they're across a lot of the pages, then every business can take advantage of it.
Yeah, that is true. Just the small changes. Great. We appreciate that answer, and I appreciate you joining us here today on the e-commerce marketing podcast, Dave. What are some ways people can get in touch with you if they do want to reach you?
I'm on all the social channels, of course. Yeah, Smart Insights, you can check out our advice, but LinkedIn is the platform I prefer.
Okay.
So yeah, if anyone's got any questions or just to follow my updates on LinkedIn, Dave Chaffey, CHAFFEY, is be happy to connect on there.
Okay, great. Well, thanks again, Dave, and we appreciate all of your insightful advice on the trends, the past trends of 2017 and the current upcoming trends of the e-commerce trends of 2018.
Thank you for inviting me, and I'll just say all the best to everyone for applying some of these techniques in 2018.
All right, great. Thanks again. Thank you for listening to the E-commerce Marketing Podcast. To access e-commerce videos and other resources to help your business grow, please visit getosi.com/videos. Subscribe to us on iTunes by searching for E-commerce Marketing Podcast, and please leave a rating and a review. Thanks for listening. See you next time.